Welcome to Living Fullness, a podcast where two unusual friends explore all things friendships, relationships, and the Christian life. My name is Stina Constantine.
And I'm Father Sean Burns. And each month we bring you a guest, someone who will share their experience and strengths with us, helping us to learn, grow, and live life to the full. Welcome to the Living Fullness podcast. This week we have a very special guest with us. So Stina, would you like to introduce?
Absolutely. We have a wonderful guest on the podcast today. Her name is Elizabeth Zelasko. She studied fine arts at the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan before attending the Proserpine School of Iconology, where she studied traditional Russian Orthodox iconography. She moved to Denver to finish her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, graduating as valedictorian of her class. Elizabeth works with Catholic publishers and institutions creating commission pieces, and she gives talks on the theological aspects and material processes of writing a traditional icon. Elizabeth also creates privately commissioned icons, paintings, and drawings as well. So Elizabeth Zelasko, welcome to the Living Fullness podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, what a nice introduction. Yeah, it's good to be here with you.
We are so delighted to have you here. Absolutely delighted.
In the winter storm of Colorado.
The absolute opposite of seasons meeting here.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. But yeah, thank you
I
for
guess to
having me.
start with, maybe if we can start with Elizabeth, if you could start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and perhaps where iconography sort of fits in to that. Where was your encounter with iconography and why does it matter to you?
Yeah. So my mom's a painter. And her father was a painter and her brother's a painter. So it just was always kind of in the house. I grew up and I consider it a great blessing, but I grew up in a house that nurtured the artistic soul of, it was very nurturing that way. And so I grew up watching my mom paint. I would just sit on her lap and watch her paint. So it was always a part of my childhood. And I happened to go to a school that actually had a special art program, which I think is nowadays I've heard of so many schools just getting rid of art programs altogether. Maybe they're looking at them as though they're frivolous, and they're really not. But that really affected me. Just having that outlet was really powerful growing up. So I knew that, growing up in New Jersey, I just had my eyes on New York City. It's like, that's just the dream, the New York City artist dream was just kind of just right across the river, just waiting for me, And so, I was born and raised Catholic, loved my faith, had a very fiery faith, loved my memories of childhood and God are very warm, very, very nurturing, very loving. But like most wayward children, I kind of went off the path and had a long story of wiggling my way back. But so it was really through many different things God was calling me back. But it kind of came to a head when I found iconography. And I really felt that not only was I called to be an artist, but I was called to be an iconographer also, or a religious artist, if you will, because I don't only do icons, but it was an encounter. It was definitely an encounter. There was one moment in time. Maybe your own stories are similar, where you can see God calling you back in many different ways, but then there is just like certain highlights, certain points. My brother was working in Wisconsin, of all places. I could have encountered icons many different places in New York City at the time, or New Jersey, but Wisconsin, I was in front of this icon of the Sacred Heart, which isn't a traditional icon. Actually, it's more of a Roman rite, meditation. So it was an interesting icon to be in front of, but I think it was the first time that I saw an icon made by hand. So it wasn't a print of an icon. And I think that's a very powerful experience, being in front of something that's hand done. So when I kind of relate it to going to a concert versus listening to that band on a CD in your car. So it's very tactile. It's like you imagine being there or you're there. And so I had this moment of like, I'm here. Like for some reason, it was just the material and just the tactileness and it was inside of this church. It was in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was inside of the church, and it was just very romantically lit. It was dim, and there was candles, and I just felt like, I just felt sucked into this image, and thought somebody made that, like a human made that, and if they made that, then I could find out how to make that. Here I am, an artist in New York City, and I'm kind of like just dying inside because I felt as though they weren't teaching me enough. There was not the classical tradition of teaching, so it was just very contemporary, and I was just really feeling at a loss. I just felt kind of like, I know there's more out there, and seeing that icons, it was kind of like God was saying, there is more. There's so much. And so when I went back home, I just, thank God, I think Google was around at the time, and I was like, how do I learn iconography? And it was like, New York City, you're already there. And I was like, great, I'm already here. So I called the lady whose number came up, and it was the Prosopon School of Iconology. And she was like, yeah, it's an open studio. You can come and you can learn how to do icons. And it blew me away so much that I left the School of Visual Arts, which is a fine school, but it's a modern style of teaching art for sure. But yeah, I left the School of Visual Arts and studied iconography for a couple of years, and that's what I do now. I mean, I just really love it. But yeah, I had no, even as a Catholic, grew up Catholic, I had no idea how much went into making this sacred art. No idea, So that's the shorter for whatever.
Wow.
There's a longer version than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is, isn't it? It's always a personal encounter when he calls you to a particular path, a particular vocation. It's so personal.
Yeah.
And I resonate so much with what you said, having been brought up, but still not understanding the process. And I still don't understand. Sure. Really the process of iconography and writing an icon, but the little that I've heard has blown my mind. So I can only imagine what that's like.
Yeah, it was incredible because you're making, if you have access to any of these classes, you don't have to be an artist to take a class. In fact, my teacher was like, it's always easier to teach non-artists because artists always come in with like, well, I think it should look this way, and she's like, yeah.
See, us non-artists are just like, tell me how it's meant to look.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Right. So it's very much a visual tradition. It's not, there's really very little freedom in it. There's a little bit, there's a tiny bit of freedom, but it's not as much as we have in the West, Yeah. And you can think, if you recall, you think of, and we could start talking about that too, if you want, the difference between like religious art and sacred art. But if you think of like the Sistine Chapel, think of Michelangelo and Raphael, like these are all gifts of the church. Like the Western art is a gift. Classical art is a gift to the world. And it's beautiful, and the amount of expression is beautiful. It still has a certain visual canon, right? There's certain things that we shouldn't see. Mary represented a certain way. So there's still rules in the West, but it's just that the rules in the East are much more specific in how the icon is made, what materials you use, and what the visual canon is for the images. So yeah, it's just super biblical. It's basically the Bible in visual form is what it is. Yeah. So
I think the very first time, sorry, you were saying.
Oh, no, you go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think the very first time that I encountered your work was the work that was commissioned by the Augustine Institute.
For
you to do the Annunciation.
Right.
Which was huge. I didn't quite realize the scale of it until I saw a couple of people standing in front of the painting as it was being in front of the icon as it was being revealed. And I thought, oh, wow, okay. It's a lot bigger than the little screen on my phone
I know.
tells me.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And that kind of goes back to that same thing of like, we can see a Van Gogh in a an art history book, but if you've ever been in front of a Van Gogh, it's like it's electric. I mean, no wonder the man is so popular so many years later, but like his paintings have a certain electricity about them that just doesn't come across. And not relating my work to Van Gogh. Okay, I'm not saying
Sure.
but no, it's way different seeing a picture of that Annunciation piece instead of being in front of it. It's a very different experience. Yeah, but yeah, that was I'm in my studio right now, and if you saw the fullness of it, you'd be really surprised that painting came out of this small.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I had to move a lot of furniture around, and but yeah, God bless the Augustine Institute. They really are. They're such a gift to the world, and they've been a gift to me too. Just that's where I met my husband. So my husband went there.
Ah,
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I've known them for a while, so it's good stuff. Yeah.
What's your husband's name?
Joseph Zelasko.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. How wonderful.
Yeah.
Brilliant. While we're talking about icons, because I've just seen today for the first time the icon that you wrote. Very Western of me.
Yeah. So I think it's totally okay, by the way. I mean, I know that there's some people that are very, very rigid. I've actually heard that, I've read this a couple different places where the word right is actually just like a translation issue. So it might have been because a painter paints a fence, and an artist is the author of an image. So, and again, I don't think that's official.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's because my next question to you was, well, what's the contrast between painting and writing in the context of art? Because it's always struck me when someone says you paint a religious painting, but you write an icon. When someone has said that to me, I must admit my Western sensibilities do tend to arc up a little bit. Yeah. Because the presumption is that there's no theology behind the Western artwork, which is frankly a false presumption.
Sure.
So I've wanted to ask the question to someone who knows what they're talking about with iconography for donkey's ages. Yeah. What the go is between, Australian idiom, donkey's ages.
Yeah,
look, any thoughts that you've already offered some significant thoughts there, but any further thoughts you could offer would be very welcome.
So I mean, what I just shared, right? I've researched it enough that it seems as though it might have just been like a translation issue. And that just kind of stuck. Or there's other thoughts out there is that, you have to say right because it's basically the Bible. It's the Bible in images, and you don't paint the Bible, you write the Bible. Or it was written, I suppose. We don't write it again today, but you know what I'm saying. So that's, I think it's paint though. So I think you're not going to go to iconography purgatory if you say, there's just, people like to be sticklers about things. And I'm just, I don't think that that's a really great way forward. But if you want to say right, if you want to say right, you say right. If you want to say paint, I don't think anybody should slap your hand or anything. I think right I think it helps just in setting it apart though, because it is so different from regular
Very
art.
unique, isn't it?
It's so unique, and it's so different from, it's not necessarily a work of art. So it's like, well, what is it then? So I think that saying
Definitely.
right does set it apart in that way, not better than, but different than. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is actually the difference part, I think, is important because I'm a big fan of Ratzinger. And one of the things that he was huge on, particularly as Pope, was that we learned to, in his words, breathe with both lungs. That we learn to appreciate the values and the offerings of both East and West. So iconography actually strikes me as a very practical way to do that.
Yeah, to bring it into the church. I think that there's problems just that I see. I mean, this is maybe another conversation, but the problem that I see is that it isn't our visual tradition. So sometimes it can be done wrong, or we bring in maybe not very super high quality icons because we're not trained to realize which ones are good or which ones are bad. So that could be a little bit of a danger of bringing something that is from the East into a Western space, so to say. So,
Sure.
So, but I think that there's, I mean, hence why I like to talk about it, because I, and I've taught classes and I've done little workshops and stuff, because I just think it's it does add value. It is a part of our tradition. I mean, I don't have like a screen share thing here, but there's several different churches within the Catholic Church, and many of them use iconography. So it's not like some foreign, it's not some Orthodox thing.
No.
Very much within our Catholic Church. It's a part of our tradition. So you think of like the Armenian Catholic Church, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, the Byzantine Catholic Church. We have so much richness under our roof. But yeah, a lot of it can be misunderstood between the Roman Rite and the Eastern rites, for sure. Yeah. So I think just, more conversations and more exposure and more access to, maybe better places to buy the icons online, or more exposure to artists who are maybe Roman and creating them. And thank you for having me on your show,
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great to,
it's so good. It's really good. It's good to ask artists to share their stuff, because we're really trying to add beauty to our church. And God bless you guys for lifting us up.
And
there's so much distortion.
Sorry.
I was just going to say there's so much distortion.
No,
we really do need opportunity for people to be able to showcase what real beauty looks like in a world that's forgotten because of all of the distractions that we're facing. So, just as I'm hearing you say, thank you so much for the platform, but thank you for doing the work that you do, for bringing that beauty into the world, for allowing people to be encounter God in a different way.
Yeah. Well, it's so, I think, we're just so inundated by images today. And I feel like not enough holy ones, though. I mean, people think of how powerful imagery is so powerful. It's so powerful that we can become addicted. Our brains are literally treating them as drug because of how much we can consume it, and we take it into ourselves, and it becomes a part of our longing and our, wanting to scroll and wanting, to seek out these things. And it's just so, I think that God has given us a great healing balm with all of the artwork that the church lifts up. So hence even we totally could have gone the route, right? I mean, if Jesus didn't come, we could have still stayed in the sort of don't make graven images. And, but because of the incarnation, God's like, no, images are good. And thank God.
Changes everything.
Right. It changes everything. So it's such a healing balm. And I think especially for our generation, humans have never been so exposed to imagery as our generation has. I think we really only we barely know the consequences of it. I think in another 50 years, we might look back and be like, oh Lord, what did we do?
Yeah.
What did we do?
Yeah.
But God always offers us a solution in the midst of it. And I really do. I even think adoration, I think, is such a healing balm too, because he's there in the Eucharist, and you sit there and you are silent. Where in our culture can you find that much beauty and silence at the same time? So anyway.
That's so true. So true. So true.
Yeah.
I guess maybe we can talk a little bit, maybe you could speak a little bit to us about the process then of writing an icon and of creating a piece. Perhaps even beginning with, my understanding is that there's quite a prayerful component even prior to beginning something new. So maybe even beginning there, if you can walk us through what some of those steps might look like.
Yeah. So I always have this prayer written out in my studio. I mean, I memorize it at this point. I have it written out. So, and I can send this to you guys too if you want, for your listeners.
Sure.
Really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the prayer before beginning an icon. And honestly, even when I do Western style stuff, I'll still use this prayer just because I think it's beautiful. It's really important to pray before you're making imagery that is to bring people closer to God. So it's kind of, that's a hefty load to, you know, to bear.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
So let's see, where can I start? It's a little bit longer than this. Is just, there's 3 different parts. You say the Our Father in the middle, but I'll just say this is the specific prayer that's for iconography. So it says, O divine Lord of all that exists, you have illumined the apostle and evangelist Luke with your most holy spirit, thereby enabling him to represent the most holy mother, the one who held you in her arms and said, the grace of him who has been born of me is spread throughout the world. Enlighten and direct my soul, my heart, and my spirit. Guide the hands of your unworthy servant so that I may worthily and perfectly portray your icon, that of your holy mother, and of all the saints, for the glory, joy, and adornment of your holy church. Forgive my sins and the sins of those who will venerate these icons, and who, standing devoutly before them, give homage to those they represent. Protect them from all evil and instruct them with good counsel. This I ask through the prayers of the most holy Theotokos, the Apostle Luke, and all the saints, now and ever, and unto ages of ages. Amen. And just for those who are listening that might not know, the Holy Theotokos is Mother Mary. So that's just a title that they use that. It just means Holy Mother of God. But isn't that a beautiful prayer? I just feel like it does, again, it kind of goes back to the difference between maybe something that's, Western versus Eastern. The very specific prayer that goes into every time I begin work on this thing, I'm praying for the person that's going to be in front of it. And that must just open floodgate. You know what I'm saying? Like, not that Western work doesn't do the same thing of opening up, but just that there's just grace in that. There's grace in these very specific prayers that have been handed down through this tradition. And how beautiful. I mean, protect them from all evil and instruct them with good counsel. Like, praise God. But just that, so that like when you're in front of an icon, somebody has prayed for you. There's prayers that have been said for you as you approach this image. I mean, that's really changes the experience, knowing that that's kind of how it started, how it, the history of the image. Yeah.
There's something very different about knowing when you stand before a piece of work that you know that the artist has prayed whilst they've created this image. There's a sense of there's almost like an emotional appreciation that you can have for the artist and for what they've been able to pour into that. It's a whole other thing to know that the artist themselves in that very process has prayed for you specifically in that moment as your encounter. That changes everything. That changes everything.
Yeah. And prayer shouldn't really be, we tend to look at prayers like, oh yeah, I'll pray for you, or prayers and thoughts. And it's sort of like, meh, it's so easy to just throw that word around, but it really is.
Sort of rolls off the tongue. Eh?
Yeah. I'll pray for you. But it's like, it really is this very real, powerful expression that works. It is a powerful work to put words out into the universe and to, that are God's words. I mean, it's not just me saying, oh yeah, I'll do that or this, or I won't, I remember listening to some talk that this Benedictine monk, I guess you'd call him a monk. Yeah, Benedictine monk was talking about how when people come and visit the abbey or monastery, I'm not entirely too sure what word to use there either, but when people would come, they would say, gosh, I just feel like it just feels so peaceful here. And he was like, well, what did you expect? There's been people praying here for like centuries. Like, you don't think it's going to permeate something, and God is here. Like, God is here. So I think that, I think it really, I think that's what I felt in front of that icon in Wisconsin was those prayers. I mean, and that was an open door for me to receive that word of like, you should go do this. I want, like I'm inviting you to go learn how to do this. And it just was, it was just that fire, So I have my guardian angel icon. I don't have a ton that I've done at home because they're, I don't hoard my own work or anything. I can't because but I have kept this one because it's just one of my favorite icons. It's the guardian angel. So this is a traditional Russian Orthodox icon. I love it. I love it because it's the guardian angels guarding over the soul. So it's the soul is being guarded by the angel. So the idea, let's see, there's so much. I mean, I could talk for an hour just on how this was made. So a condensed version would be that it's on wood. There's a certain type of gesso. A gesso is like, do you ever paint a wall and you have to prime it first? Mm-hmm. Gesso is a primer. So if you just put paint on wood, it's porous. So the paint would just get sucked up. So there has to be there's always something practical about icons, but then a layer of like theology that goes along with it. So practically speaking, like we have to have gesso. The whole icon wants to be like it because it's tradition handed down. The materials that we use are very traditional. So Renaissance paintings were done in a similar way with a similar gesso and egg tempera painting, right? Egg tempera paint, which is just ground up pigment and an egg and wine emulsion that you make. And you're basically making your own paint out of powder and liquid. And so those two things together makes paint. And so we basically make our own paint to make the icons. And that's why they take so long, because it's just not something, I can't go to the store and be like, burnt umber, and I'm just here's my burnt. That'd be so nice, but it's just not the way that they work. So it's a powder, a colored powder. So after the gesso goes on, let's see, the first thing that goes on is this it's a clay, it's a liquid clay that's this red color. And you put it on underneath the halo. And this is my favorite part. Like if I was going to dig into anything with you guys, it would be this, because I think this is just this is cream of the crop theology. So you put the liquid clay, that's this color, underneath the halo. And you burnish it, you sand it. It's a really long process. You should look it up on YouTube because it's really fun to watch. But so this is like the red clay of Adam. This is like Adam being pulled out of the earth. Okay. And so we need this clay in order to hold the gold leaf, which is like God. Okay. So body good, spirit good, right? We have to have the clay or else we can't have anything to hold God with. Right. So it's this beautiful process of moistening when you want to moisten the clay, you have to breathe on the clay. And we do that in little areas 3 times. So like Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I'm just breathing with a real hot, like you're really, the heat of your mouth is moistening the clay. And then you lay the gold leaf down. And then it's here. It's totally, it becomes one with the clay at that point. Yeah.
I have tears as you're speaking for me. Like I'm so moved. So moved.
It's so beautiful. I mean, it's it's so anyway, so if you look closely, you can see that there's a red line around the halo. You guys see that?
Yeah.
I'm holding that correctly. So that's called the alpha line. So it's the first line of pigment that goes on. And it's they call it the marriage line, or the red crown of martyrdom, okay? Because before this point, it's just the wood of the icon, the gesso, the clay, the gold. It's these materials. And now from here on out, it's going to be all pigment. So it's these two things being joined together now. So it's like the marriage of these two things. And she called it the red crown of martyrdom because the icon essentially has to, die to itself, which is kind of what marriage is, right? It has to die to itself in order to become this image of God. So it can't remain white anymore. It just can't remain what it is. It has to die. So that's what they call. So that's like the opening up of the icon in a sense. The the first layer is called Roseskrish, which means to open the icon up. So it's all very like gritty, darker colors that you're using, because we're kind of thinking of it like, we're starting here and we're building the icon up towards God. So you kind of get this sort of, as you get closer and closer to God, your highlights become finer and finer. And by highlights, I mean like representing light and not shadow. So you're just kind of, you're kind of building it up. So then the last line to go on is that white line that you see. So that's called the omega line. So that's the last thing. So that kind of closes the icon. So that's the last part of, the last thing that I paint is just this. And it basically just reminds us of where we came from, which is that white gesso, just that plain blank, slate of the icon. So we're remembering that, and it's the alpha and omega line. So that I love, that's my favorite part of just it's just, and then like maybe not all icons have this, but a lot of them do. And so you'll notice it if you walk around, or you just look online at icons, just look up like Orthodox icons, you'll see that many of them have this red and white line. Yeah. And it's just so beautiful. Yeah. So we also put the clay out here because it's kind of like it's the body, it's like the body of the icon. There's a little not all of them have this, so I've done them with this and I've done them without it, but you see how it's recessed? It's like carved out. So it's practical in that it protects the image, but the symbolism behind that is just that we have an inside and an outside, like our spirits and our outside bodies. So it's kind of this relationship, and there's always something that will come out onto the border. And my teacher told me that this is evangelization. So we can be these, we are these beautiful things, but we have to remember to come outside and as I tend towards being an introvert in many ways. I'm a little bit of both an extrovert and an introvert, but it's a good reminder for me to like, okay, you can be introverted, but like you have to like come out and share, and talk to people about things. But you can kind of see how the halo almost always comes out, and then the incenser is poking out on the bottom there. Do you guys see that? It's so tiny.
Yeah.
Ah, yes,
Not the best example, but yeah.
No, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
What else? I guess I could say something about the way that it's lit is also very different. So, so picture, I have some examples of like, I have this out too. This is the Annunciation painting that's actually this much bigger, visually, but just the part of her. You can kind of see that in Western art, there's a light source. So that the light is coming from a certain area, right? This is like how we experience things just walking around planet Earth. We have the light from the sun. This is how we see things, right? In iconography, the light's actually coming from within. So it's very, very different. And that's why they tend to look flat, because we read them as like, where's the light? Where's the light source? But it's actually, the light source is coming from inside the person, which is God living in them. And it cuts through like a sword or like a facet to a diamond. It's this sort of cutting through from the person's very bones. It's coming out from their clothes. Yeah. And you can see it I kind of thinking of it as like a hot burning coal, where it's like red on the inside, and as it gets closer to the outside, it almost darkens a little bit, but it's that kind of, so you can kind of see, what I mean, where, the light source, it's not coming from here. It's not coming from here. So they tend to look flat, but once you look closer, you can kind of see the person is glowing. You can see that their bone structure is coming through. And this is an angel, so it's a tiny bit different, but
sure.
Yeah. But yeah. So I think that's another thing that's helpful when you're viewing an icon, just to know those, just even those few things, just kind of helps you. I mean, gosh, the appreciation level just goes up way high once you start learning about things. I mean, that's with all things, isn't it? You're just kind of like, wow, I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to do in the Patreon section of this episode, for those that are watching and listening, Elizabeth's going to go through a meditation of the nativity icon that you've written as well. And so for those who are on our Patreon, you can follow through with that. But perhaps we can just use that icon for a moment, Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind also sharing a couple of things that our community can perhaps take away to meditate during this Advent season as we're preparing for Christmas.
Yeah. So this is the image that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And this is, so again, this is a visual canon. So if you Google nativity icons, a lot of them will look very similar to this, but this is just one that I created. And because there were certain aspects that I saw in a bunch of different nativity icons that I really wanted to pull together, and I wanted to highlight certain things. And so, it was a real honor to do this. I mean, it really, the original one, I forget how big it is, but it's sizable. And somebody owns it in Denver. But, so I think one thing you could take away from this image, which, I find to be like the deepest part for me, is that, so this is the nativity icon. Okay. So Mary is, I don't know how much you can see on the screen, but Jesus is in a tomb. So you'll see this often in nativity icons, and even in some Western art. If you look up, there's some awkward moments where like baby Jesus is on the floor and Mary's like looking at him, and it's just this unnatural looking, like, why is he on the floor? But it's just to represent that Jesus was born to die for us. So he's literally wrapped in linen, like he was when he died. And he's literally in a tomb, like we placed him when he died. But it just shows that he was born for this. This was his mission. He came here to die for our sins. And so at this moment, she's given birth to him, but she's also on some level mourning the loss of him already, what I love about this too is that, he's born into a cave, right? So a lot of icons, like, they don't show it as like a little cute stable. And actually, they've done some research, and they know that some of the early stables were caves. So it's very possible that this was actually the scene. When it's funny because this is the image that's been handed down. This is a very old image, so it's like, well, maybe it was. They knew what they were doing. They didn't just make it up. So. But it's so black, and what I love about this image is that he comes into the darkest parts of us, and he comes and he brings light, and he comes and he saves us in those places that smell of sheep dung and smell of donkey, and and they're awful, and it's like that's where he came. He came into the nastiest places and brought light, the light of the star, the Christmas star, and the beauty of the Holy Family and the simplicity of the Holy Family, brought that into the worst part. He chose not to be born in a castle, and that's remarkable. I mean, I would have chosen. I mean, shoot. I would have a nicer studio for myself, and that's just like a studio. It's not like where I was born,
Yeah.
But I would have chosen the better, the fancier path, but he didn't, So I just love that. So also just this, the breaking through of time and space, like God became man. We tend to make it so cute. And that's okay.
Don't we?
I mean, fine. Make it cute. Make it a little nativity play with your kids so they can experience the beauty of the nativity. Fine, but don't stay there. don't stay there. Like, stop and see that the gravity of this moment of God becoming man, becoming a bit. I mean, that just, if it just blows your mind. God became man. He didn't have to do that. And here he is. So it just, it's this breaking through of like rock and space and cave and time and a virgin's womb. And like, I mean, it just, it's just incredible. So I hope that comes across, but it's just,
Yeah.
I think that, it's really easy to leave the nativity in a sort of cute zone. And
yes, it is. It is. That's right.
It's less confronting when it's that way. we don't have to enter into it when it's just cute and pretty.
And it also gives us the false impression. So it gives us the false impression that we understand it, that we comprehend it, that we've got it. And we just don't.
Yeah. Like barely at all. Like, barely. Like even as like devout Catholics, consecrated people, it's like, I mean, we get glimpses of it, but the reality is that we just no idea,
In the end, all that we can do is just go, well, love does such things.
Yeah. Yeah. And please like be born in the cave of the dark cave of my heart every year, over and over and over again. I need to just approach Advent that way and approach Christmas that way of like, Jesus, I believe, help my unbelief. Like, it really is it's just very much like that, isn't it? Like, if you're being honest, it's just, Jesus, come and save me again and again and again. Yeah. But I think that probably gives a good example, right, of, that when you're looking at Western versus Eastern, I think it's really obvious. It's really easy to be like, oh yeah, iconography, but really there's just and for Western art too, there's so much that we just blast right past. So I don't think that it's only icons that your viewers should stop and pause and just, really try to read the image. I think we've forgotten how to read paintings altogether. I think even in museums, I think the average person walks past a painting and spends maybe I think it's less than 1 second in front of each painting.
Oh my.
Yeah. And that's for a patron, right? That's somebody that paid to go into a museum.
Yeah.
So, and it's just not, they weren't meant to, that's not what they're meant for, Again, it's like scrolling. It's the same thing. You're like, it's good.
Yeah.
That's nice.
The scroll of death, right? That's what it does. It desensitizes us to beauty.
Yeah. But I would just invite everybody to just stop in front of something. Like, if something strikes you, if you go to a museum and a painting strikes you, how about you just set a timer on your phone and sit in front of it for 5 minutes at least. And at best, maybe 20, maybe an hour if you don't have children. I don't recommend bringing children into museums. I'm probably on a board in the Fort Worth Museum in Texas. Do not let this woman enter again. I had 2 little kids at the time, and I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck was I thinking? Anyway, yeah,
you're ambitious.
I was like, oh, this will be an experience for them or not. Oh, not.
Not yet.
Not yet. They just wanted to touch everything, and I was sweating.
Oh, bless. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Elizabeth.
Oh, you bet. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah. And for those of you who would like to hear more about the nativity icon, Elizabeth's going to talk us through a meditation through that over on our Patreon page. So please jump over and become a Patreon member to be able to access that. For our higher tier supporters, we've actually received some beautiful small prints of this icon that we're going to send to our higher tier supporters as a thank you and as a happy Christmas. Thank you for supporting us throughout this year of our Patreon as well. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sending those through to us. To be able to share.
You bet. My pleasure.
So I guess to end the episode then, we've got a couple of rapid fire questions, which is what we throw at all of our guests. So just the sort of first thing that comes to mind for you. Padre, would you like to start?
So to start with, tea or coffee?
Depends on the time of day. I like I think, in all honesty. Coffee gets me out of bed. Tea gets me through the rest of the day.
Nice.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair
Well
enough.
balanced.
Yep. Well balanced. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Question 2,
You've actually
what is your
got-
favorite? No, go on.
No,
You go,
I was just
Padre.
going to say you've actually got you've got exclusively coffee, exclusively not coffee, and and then a well balanced.
Most of our guests generally tend to swing one way or another. It's almost like Padre has this.
That's right.
We've got
that's
this secret bet going on. I don't know what we're winning
my
at the end of this, but
How fun. I wonder if it has something to do with me being an introvert and an extrovert too. It's like, yes, tea and coffee. Yes.
Yeah.
Take best
Like all
of both
the-
worlds.
Yeah.
Question 2 is, what's your favorite outing?
My favorite outing. Oh, I want to say that I love hiking, but because I live in Colorado. Yeah, but I think that might be my favorite. I feel like I don't do it often enough. It's so close. I feel like I hiked more when I lived in New Jersey because the woods was like right there. It was literally like I grew up in the woods in New Jersey. And so it was like hiking was just like a daily thing. And in Colorado, it has to be planned because it's like 40 minutes. It's still like 40 minutes, or 20 minutes. It's just not right outside your door, which sounds funny to say, but yeah. Yeah. But I love that. I just love getting outside and, it just gets me out of my headspace. If I'm in a bad headspace, it's like just getting out and seeing God's beauty. I mean, and just fresh air and sun. I think it's a cure. Yeah, it's such a cure.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What's the most inspiring book you've read recently?
I'm a part of a book club. And the current book that we're reading is called Two Old Women. And I think it's one of the most inspiring books I've ever read. It's so good.
Oh.
It's about these two old women. They're a part of a tribe of people living in Alaska. And the tribe has run out of food. And what happened back in the day is that they would leave the weak behind. I mean, they're really... they weren't being mean. They literally were starving. So like people are barely able to walk, so they can't carry the old. So they'll leave the old behind. So these two old women are left behind, and they make the decision together to survive. And it's remarkable. The story is, and apparently it's a true story. It's a legend that's been handed down with the Alaskan people. So it's really remarkable. An Alaskan legend of betrayal, courage, and survival. And it's by Velma Wallace. That's right. I'm so bad with names. I'm really, really bad with names. Velma Wallace. It's beautiful. Yeah. I don't know how it ends yet. I'm sure they die eventually.
Yeah. The next question for you is, what is your favorite scripture passage?
It's such a good one because there's so many.
Or perhaps one that you go to frequently for meditation.
I feel like which one that I don't go to, but one that comes to me is always all things are possible with God. With God, all things are possible. That one has practically assaulted me several times. Sometimes God just wants you to, just to remind you over and over and over again that all things are possible. I mean, my conversion story is quite wayward. And so I think that, I think he probably knew that I needed that one over and over again of just like, look what I have done in your life. I mean, look what I've done for you, Yeah. So not to ever lose hope or think that things are limited or look at things in that way as being limited or not possible or outside of God's providence or his ability. So I go back to that one over and over again. Yeah. Good questions. Those are a little bit harder than like coffee or tea, though. Yeah.
It's a false sense of security. We start with a false sense of security.
That's right. We lull you in. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Well,
I think there's one more.
Oh, there's one more. There's one more. I don't have a secretary, so this is the. Tell us one thing you love about your family.
Oh, how lovely! That's a lovely question. One thing I love about them. Oh, there's a lot more than one. I love my so I have a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And I love seeing their love for my husband. It's just so remarkable, and it's just so pure, and it's so trusting, and it's just such a beautiful, it just brings everything full circle, I mean, just to see, I just like, we created these little humans, and then they're returning that love, and they don't have to, but like when they do, it's just the most like remarkable.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's the most remarkable little thing. But especially the love directed towards my husband. It's just, it's so gratifying. It's so gratifying. I like love too.
Oh, beautiful.
It's just special.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, thank you so much for joining the podcast episode today, Elizabeth. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. What an honor to talk to you guys.
Oh, God bless you.
And maybe you can. Sorry, you go on, Padre.
I was just going to say it's been so beautiful being able to talk to you. When you were speaking about icons, I've got like 7 Post-it notes just plastered on my desk of things that you've said. So thank you. Yeah, good. Really great stuff.
Yeah. Praise God. That's good. Yeah.
Maybe you can let us know what your website and social media handles are, so that people can jump over and have a look at some of your work and how they can get in contact with you.
So my website is elizabethzelasko.com. And I know that's really long, like I could have just been like lizart.com would have been, anyway. Elizabeth Zelasko. Zelasko is Z as in zebra, ELASKO.com.
Yep.
And on Instagram, I think it's like at Elizabeth.Zelasko. But I'm on there, and it's not, I think social media has done a lot of horrible things for the world, but it's also done a lot of fabulous things too. And it really has been a beautiful thing to share the process of making icons on social media, because people love it. They I think people are on some level just, starving for tradition and beauty. And I think that when they see it, it rings a bell. And so if I can bring people closer to God through sharing the process of making beautiful things, I mean, heck, I'm going to be there for it. It's going to be.
Yeah.
So,
good on you.
Yeah. So
awesome. Yes. So go and check out the website. Go and check out some of Elizabeth's work or her social media. Her Instagram page is filled with some beautiful short videos of process whilst you're creating, which is wonderful to watch as well. So
and
go
such
check
good
that
music.
out. Well,
oh my gosh, when I was like, I'm a child of the 80s. Okay, I was born in 83. So the idea of like making an art video with music, like how fun is that? I mean, we didn't.
Yeah. So retro.
Very 80s.
So retro.
Very 80s.
So
I
good.
did not have that at my fingertips when I was It's just like, how cool. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. So go and check that out. And there was one other thing I was going to say, and I've just blanked on what that was.
Happy Advent.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, happy Advent. That's right.
Yeah.
Happy
That's
Advent
right.
indeed. Yeah. So jump on over to our Patreon page and follow as we can continue the conversation here with Elizabeth with the meditation of the nativity icon. Jump over to Patreon to be able to continue that conversation, watch that conversation over there. But we will catch you again next week with another episode. We're not too far away from ending this season of Living Fullness. So a couple of more weeks to go and then we're at the end of the year. So make sure you check in and tune in for that. But yeah, we will catch you next time. And until then, as always, know of our love and prayers.
God bless.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Living Fullness. We hope that in this episode there was something useful or helpful or something that blessed your life. If that is the case, would you please consider sharing this podcast with someone? Perhaps it will bless their lives too.
Please also subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. That will also help others to find the podcast too. And join us over on our social media, Living Fullness on Instagram and Virtue Ministry on Facebook.